But isn't this also a form of exploitation, that you charge a fee which is very minimal, and within that fee band, it is just not possible to give fulfill those minimum requirements of education?
Well, fixing our fees and fixing or regulating the fees, we look to the balance sheet, because that is the only way we can find out, because we are not practically present there. We don't really know how they work. We only look to their balance sheet. We only look to what is their revenue. So on that basis, we find if there is deficiency, then we raise the fees.
Hali Sahab, barring some dozen schools who have good infrastructure, who have good number of students and revenue generation is good, majority of the schools are who run within this fee band of say 400, 500 to 800. When we raise this point that any school who has a very high fee point, looking at our own financial capacity generally of the people, we see the sense of exploitation in that. But isn't this also a form of exploitation, that you charge a fee which is very minimal, and within that fee band, it is just not possible to give fulfill those minimum requirements of education?
Right.
So is the regulator taking into account that point as well, that you should not have an infrastructure that is less than minimal? You should not have a fee point that doesn't actually explain how do you give the education. So should we have a minimum slab for the fee and a minimum infrastructure requirements also?
The question is, see, every school, see what happens, every school fixes fees depending upon the where it is located. Right. That's one more important factor. Schools located in villages where people don't have the capacity to pay.
Right.
But it's also a fact those schools are not providing the best facilities. The question is how to address that issue. Now, for that, there should have been a team which would survey these schools. But we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the manpower to deal with that. You will be surprised that when we visit a school, I have to take the staff which is doing other works.
Right.
It is a very serious issue, because we have seen schools who are located in far-flung areas or in rural areas. Not only that, located in cities also.
Even in
cities
urban
also,
areas, yeah.
In a 1 canal, 2 canal land.
Yeah.
But it is very difficult to understand to understand whether they are providing the basic infrastructure. That is a job which perhaps needs to be addressed by the government. They have to provide us that manpower so that we can assess how these schools are operating.
So that means this sense is right, that if you cannot take the fee beyond a point, taking into account the general economic status of the people here, though there can be exceptions, because there is in any society there are economic classes and we need to address other classes, but these schools need to be told very clearly that you cannot compromise on the standards of the education by bringing in the fee point low. It's not, right. Regulator cannot be deceived by giving a low fee point, then not fulfilling the educational needs. On the other hand, is it possible for the regulator to build a sort of consciousness among the society by involving parents and by involving the private school bodies also, the other government institutions, that we need to have some standards defined for all the schools, and then handhold them. If they have invested their lifetime into it, let's find ways and means how government can help them, or maybe private sector can help them, and also give them a time duration wherein they can come closer to those standards which they can follow. Give them a one-time fitment period, and
this uniformity in fixing slabs with respect to the fixation of fees, according to me, is not workable. Because as I told you very earlier, fixing our fees and fixing or regulating the fees, we look to the balance sheet, because that is the only way we can find out.
Right.
Because we are not practically present there. We don't really know how they work. We only look to their balance sheet. We only look to what is their revenue. So on that basis, we find if there is deficiency, then we raise the fees. If we find that there is almost that there is no substantial profit,
Right.
we raise the fees.
Is there a possibility of, there are post 1990s, we had many people who established, individuals or maybe some groups who
Now,
established
why there are
schools.
mushroom of schools which have come up during the last 30
Now,
years?
exactly. But before that, you may be knowing it more than anybody else. There was a community involvement in establishing the schools. It wasn't a personal or family business. So, but all those schools, they couldn't stand in the competition. And now, when we find that we require schools who can, provide us affordable education, affordable in the sense that maybe a reasonable number of people can go to these schools. Is your department doing some kind of a survey where we can locate some schools who are genuinely, by their contents of the trust deed, by the working of the schools, who can be qualified as community schools, and then give them a kind of a revision or a review, a chance for the review of the fee structure and the working of entire things, and create a margin for them so that they can compete with the schools who have a high fee point?
See, when you talk about this providing a reasonable fee structure, I told you that there is a mechanism already in place.
Right.
Now, so far as providing them, can you repeat this question again?
I mean, if there are community schools who are genuinely, you draw a mechanism wherein it can be established that there no amount of profit goes to any person or any family, but is being genuinely put back into the school, and school has no ownership. It is a community-owned school. A special case for them that if they have to upgrade their systems, if there is an intent to upgrade the systems, if there are people who are associated with those who can be genuinely thought of as educationists, a special case for them.
Frankly speaking, I have not come across any such
School
so far. What I have come across is always either they are they are owned by persons, or a trust is created, and trust is created within the family.
Right.
At times it looks very strange,
But
that
in case
that the owner purchases the land, constructs a building.
right.
He is a member of the trust. He takes rent for the building, which is owned by him, and he is a trustee also. So these things are there, but law permits them
But
to
I
do that.
have two questions here, because I qualified it if it is established. First, that if it is established, that there's, let's say there is one school or two schools which now are trying to discover themselves again by becoming community schools. How would the regulator deal with them? I said if.
See, community. See, let's be very clear about the role of the fees fixation committee. Fees fixation committee is seized of the matter when somebody puts across his file for fixation of his fees. We don't lay down the policies. We don't lay down the guidelines how the school is to be run.
Right.
We only see that the fees is being charged reasonably from the parents, from the students. Now, to provide some incentive would mean that you give some relaxation in their case. That if you are raising by 5%, you raise in case they are 10%.
Right.
But that will come only when we know from their paperwork.
Yeah.
There were some community schools, who I would not name anyone, but they have their functioning has deteriorated. Not because of the reason that what you say, but for their own
Reasons.
See, what has happened over a period of time, everybody has become commercialized.
True.
When a school sees the school is earning 1 crore, why should not I earn 2 crore? I have established it 20 years back.
Right.
So that is the problem.
So on
And unfortunately, I'm told, so far I don't know, there might be, but very few educationists are involved in these schools. Very few educationists who really have a background as to how a school is to be run, what are the requirements, what curriculum is to be provided in the schools. I didn't come across any such thing.
So that means the regulator, as a government constituted body, is conscious of this fact that if the functioning of the schools, if it is ownership, is really found to be serving the community, the regulator will be more than ready to handhold the school and find the means, of course within the law and the regulations, how this school can restore itself and how it can become financially viable.
But what do you mean to say that nobody owns the ownership of the
Nobody
school?
has an ownership.